if you don't mind, if you can please mute your phone if you're not speaking. So, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another session of Azure Power Lunch. And let me share my screen first. Okay, so let's. So the topic today is Azure Virtual NAT Gateway. This is a service which just went into public preview. And we will talk about it today. This is a quick blurb about myself. By the way, this slide will be available after the session. I will upload the video of the session as well as the slide deck, and you can get it from our YouTube channel or from the website. It's the link of the slide deck is in the description. You can download it from there. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what is a NAT. I mean, if you don't know about it, it's a networking concept. Just quickly, briefly, it's acronym for Network Area Address Translation. So put simply, the goal is to map one IP address to the other. This is in a simple terms. So in a number of scenarios, when you are inside a virtual network and you are making call outside from virtual machines or other VMs type application or application running on the VM, you are accessing resources that are from third party or that are some other services. And what they need is they need to know that the IP address that they are accessing, being accessed from, they want to whitelist that IP, that public IP, because they don't know if it's coming from a malicious IP or things like that. So that's where what you need is you need some sort of way where you can control what will be your outbound IP. And that's where NAT or Azure Virtual NAT Gateway comes into picture. Okay, it is an outbound, um, simplifies the outbound connectivity. So whenever you access any resource outside of your virtual network where a VNet gateway is deployed, it will pick one of the IPs that you have assigned to that particular gateway. At this point, you can deploy a VNet gateway on and you can attach it to multiple subnets in a VNet, but you cannot spread it across virtual networks. Okay. Um, Also, you can assign not only public IP addresses, but also IP address prefixes. So let's say if you have a lot of machines, applications running inside that virtual network, there's a lot of access outside. So instead of just giving an IP address, you can give a prefix, and then other kind of third-party services where your VMs are accessing those services, they can whitelist those IP addresses. Okay. And we will talk about resiliency and manageability in a minute. But at this point, this is the core of this services. This is basically provides the outbound connectivity. Please do not confuse it with the inbound connectivity. Okay, so this is for the scenarios where the origination happened from inside the VNet. When you go from inside the VNet to outside, it will the outbound address or public IP will be controlled by NAT. You don't have to do any routing. You don't have to do any type of custom routing or anything to or user-defined route. It is all controlled by this NAT. I know it's a kind of a new service, so I just want to have open for any questions. Everybody is with me so far. Any questions before we move any further? Okie dokie. So let's quickly move on. The great thing about this is it works well with the load balancer, with the public IP of a VM. So let's say that in a VNet, you have a, um, a virtual NAT gateway deployed. Okay, and it is kind of attached to a couple of subnets. Then at the same time, you have other VMs deployed as well, which are one of them has a public IP, instance level public IP, and exposed to the public IP, and can be accessed through that. And then there is an IP attached, public IP attached to the load balancer. Okay, so just look at the arrows. All the arrows which are kind of non-dotted, I mean, which are full arrows, um, they show where the request is originating. And this is very important to understand this concept. So with NAT, origination is the key here. So for example, for the public IP, when it's coming from the load balancer, as you can see this request coming in, it will go out the same way. So basically there is no issue there. The NAT does not come into picture at all. It stays out of that flow. Second one from the left, you are looking at instance level public IP for the VM. Somebody is accessing that VM from outside. Once again, this is a inbound origination flow. As you can see from the flow direction, it's inbound. Look at the, look at the kind of so it's an inbound flow, and as it is going out the same way. NAT is not coming into picture. But look at the outbound flow. Anything that is coming out from subnet A or subnet B, since NAT is connected to both the subnet, it is going out the same way. It is going through the same way. Okay. So um, so what happens is any outbound flow, anything that you are accessing outbound, that service will see the IP address coming from whatever you assign to the NAT. And we will look at how you create the NAT and all, and we will take a look at that. With that, just keep in mind, with this, only standard load balancer and standard public IP and public IP prefixes are supported. Just keep that in mind. Um, um, with this um, VNAT gateway. Okay. Any questions?
I have a question actually, Naveed. So which scenario I see, like it's understood you want to connect the subnet to the NAT. That's but
Mhm.
then there's a scenario where the VM is connected right away.
Yeah.
Is there a scenario that like you could
Yeah.
mention where I would do that?
Exactly. So let's say you have virtual machine and a virtual network, and people are connecting to it through RDP over that public IP. So they will connect
Oh
fine.
yeah.
It is only when you are making call, let's say you have a web app running on that VM that is accessing a third party service, and they want to whitelist that IP. So for them, for that service, you will give the NAT gateway IP. You will not give the VM IP. Okay, you will give the public IP of the NAT or IPs of the NAT to whitelist, not the public IP of the virtual machine or the load balancer to whitelist. Okay, because whenever outbound, any outbound, outwards originating traffic will assume the IPs or public IPs or prefixes assigned to the NAT gateway. Okay, good question. Let's, any other question? Okay, let's move on. So this is kind of a more detailed diagram. So just kind of going on the same facts, like you have on the left-hand side, you have the diagram where you don't have a load balancer. You just have a instance level public IP or IPs assigned to those VMs. Inbound, everything will come through, VM with instance level public IP, that's how you access it. Outbound, it will be all traffic will go out, any outbound originating traffic, not to the response of the inbound. That will go the same way. Any outbound originating traffic will assume the public IP of the NAT gateway. Okay. Um, and same way with the load balancer and all. So same thing. I mean, anything coming from through the load balancer, it will assume it will be business as usual, but any outbound flow of the traffic which is originate from these two subnets will follow the NAT gateway path. Okay, so just keep that in mind. In terms of the availability zone, it is zone specific. So when you are deploying this NAT gateway, it is deployed in a particular zone, not across the zone. Normally, what you may want to do is you may want to deploy multiple VNet gateway. You cannot share them. So this is at this point, it does not support um, deployment across zones. So as you can see here, there are three VNet gateways deployed, one in each zone. AZ1, AZ2, AZ3, and each of them. So at this point, across zone deployment is not, or kind of a multi-zone deployment is not supported. Yes, you can have multiple um, um, NAT gateway and you can deploy them across zones. I mean, deploy them in different zones, but the across zone deployment, just like you can take a scale set and deploy it across multiple zones, that is not supported. Okay. So with that, let's quickly look at limitation. It is in public preview. Just keep in mind. Uh, Only support standard resources. Okay. Basic resources are not compatible with NAT. If you have basic resources, basic IPs, and things like that, or basic load balancer, they should not be deployed in a VNet subnet configured with NAT. Okay. Outbound traffic will not, I mean, this is very important, will not honor any NSGs on NIC or on the subnet. This is a limitation right now. Hopefully, as we move towards GA, we find a resolution for that. Okay. Um, and as I already talked about it, that you cannot um, you cannot have NAT spread across different networks. Yes, and single NAT you can use NAT gateway, you can use across different subnets, but it cannot go across two subnet which are in different VNets. Okay, with that, let's quickly go over our demo scenario. So we have two virtual networks and we have uh, three VMs. One is our destination VM. And what we have on that destination VM is a simple Nginx. All three are Linux VM. We have a simple Nginx VM running on this IP 249.20, which is our destination VM. And we are running a simple Nginx web app or web service there. We have one VNet, which is NATed using the VNet gateway, and you can see the IP addresses, and another VM, which is in a VNet where there is no gateway. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to access the service and then see what IP address we see on the destination side, on the side of 249.20. Okay, so um, let's, by the way, any questions at this point? Okay. So let's start with, by the way, if you want to create a create a VNet gateway, at this point, you have to use a special portal. This is a special preview portal, which have that feature enabled. So I'm going to just take that and I'm going to open that portal. So I'm going to just paste it here and open this portal. So its portal is going to come up and it's going to show me what NAT gateway I have. I'm going to create a new NAT gateway and I'm just going to type in, let's name it uh, PL demo. Let's see, PL demo. We are going to do it in South Central US. Availability zone. There are no availability zones, so it doesn't matter. So in regards to public IP, I can select a public IP or I can use create new public IP prefixes. Of course, I can pick my subnet where I'm going to deploy. So that will deploy the gateway and it will deploy to that particular subnet. What I'm going to do is just, I mean, it takes a few minutes to deploy. So I'm not going to actually go ahead and deploy. I'm going to show you kind of the, the baking trick where you have a cake already baked. So I'm going to show you a gateway that is already created. To be honest, there is not much to the gateway here. I mean, you have the overview. It shows you what are two things that you have configured. Pretty standard stuff, access control and all, which is standard with every Azure resource. And then you have the IP addresses. You can apply I think 60 IP addresses. I have to check. There is a limitation how many IP addresses that you can attach, public IP addresses you can attach to this NAT gateway. Okay, and of course you can assign public IP prefixes. So you can create an IP prefix, so range of IPs that you can assign to this um, particular gateway. Okay. The next thing is subnet. So that's where you will select subnet. As you can see, you can select a VNet and then you can assign subnets from that VNet, but it cannot span multiple VNets. So you have to be, if you want to assign um, um, like subnets, they have to belong to the same VNet. Also, it will ignore subnets which have any basic resources. Okay. In terms of configuration, this is the idle timeout. So this is the idle timeout before it will reset, as it says that um, kind of remove the idle flows once that idle timeout is expired. Okay. So with that, so I have this, VNet gateway created. It is attached to this subnet, which is NAT. It's in a VNet called NAT Gateway VNet. Um, and there is one VM in that VNet, and this is uh, this VM. I call it NAT VM. Okay, this is the uh, running inside the um, behind the NAT gateway. Okay, then I have another VM which is I'm calling a Bastion VM or whatever. I mean, look at this. It's a Linux VM, and um, that is running basically in a VNet or a subnet where there is no VNet gateway. Okay, everybody with me so far? And then I have this destination VM, which is nothing. It is just running a small web server, Nginx web server, and I am just kind of reading the logs, displaying the logs, access logs. So anyone accesses it, it just prints a record which has the IP address. So I know what IP address the call came from. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a Control C and I'm gonna start from scratch. Just uh, you know, and let's look at all the logs from the start. So we know, I mean, we are starting fresh, and I'm going to access it from the Bastion VM. Remember, this is a VM which does not have a NAT gateway, and this is the public IP of the VM. So I know I'm going to switch to presentation. So this is the public IP, 52.177.220.116. Okay, so this is the public IP. Um, so I'm just going to make the call. I am calling um, the the VM which has the web service running, and I'm going to make a few calls. It's just returning some data, so I'm just going to make few calls so we know that just to have a few records and look at these calls. And it is seeing the public IP that is assigned to the VM. Okay, so this is the public IP 52.177.220.116. As you can see, this is the public IP. So this is the public IP that is assigned to that particular VM, and that is showing up in the list. Okay. Um, so now let's look at the browser one more time. What is the public IP that we have assigned? 141. That's the NAT Gateway Public IP. So this is the, sorry, I have the wrong public IP here. Let me just put the right public IP here. 52.17. So this is the public IP of the NAT Gateway. I have a VM that is running inside the NAT gateway, inside a subnet where the NAT gateway is applied. So let's see what happened there. So I'm gonna go to that NAT VM, and I'm gonna make the same, call the same web app. It's a dummy web app, so I'm gonna call it a few times. And let's go to that machine and let's see what it says. Look, this is the IP address of the NAT gateway. So we are not seeing the IP address of the VM. VM has a public IP assigned. And if you can see here, the public IP assigned is this one. And by the way, this IP is wrong. I need to fix that. What was the IP? 52.177.244. 141. Okay. So as you can see, this is the IP. If you look here in the logs of the web server, this is the IP that we are seeing. So NAT, as I said, it is kind of controlling what IP, the outbound traffic, everything is flowing through it, and that's the IP that you're seeing on the front. So although it's a, I mean, kind of not a very fancy service, but still, it's kind of simplify one crucial need for your application where you want to make sure that whenever your applications are running in a VNet, they are accessing resources outside. You want to make sure you want to control what IP address they're using, so other entities, uh, you know, who are kind of running those services and you're accessing their services, you want to make sure that they are, I mean, they can whitelist your IP. So any questions? Okay. Um, so as usual, these are some of the resources, of course, VNet Gateway Overview. Just keep in mind, you cannot just use this service. You have to, since it's not a GA service, you will have to kind of whitelist it. So whitelist is you call these to enable this feature, for Microsoft.network namespace. This is a resource manager, allow NAT gateway, and then register the provider. It will take a few minutes sometime. And after that, you will have to use this NAT portal to access the resources. Otherwise, you won't be able to see resources. This is a preview portal to create and access the NAT resources. So that's you will have to use. So with that, one last time, any questions, comments, feedback?
And hey, Naveed, thanks for the presentation. Do you know when that NSG support is coming? You know, where other NSGs will be honored?
Not yet. I'm not sure. I mean, I think they will announce it, but as you can see, this is I knew this thing is coming because I'm pretty sure a number of people don't want you know application to access any outbound resource. So yes, that is a big ask, and I'm not sure when it's coming.
Okay.
Just to reiterate, Naveed, thank you again for the presentation. But so the main use case for this is just to be able to specify a specific outbound IP for a VM or a network to use.
Yes, IP or IPs,
IP
because IPs or a range of IP. Basically, yes. I mean, so it is specific for outbound access.
Right.
Yeah. Let's not confuse it. Oh, I mean, now I have an IP that I can access any VM in the VNet. No, it is not. I mean, it's still that is only for the outbound, basically subnet or VNet going out.
Right. Okay, I appreciate it. And thanks again for the presentation.
Folks, any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, and hope to see everyone next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Naveed.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.